Hey everybody, so today we are talking about emails and giving you guys a little guide to make sure that every time you guys write emails, you're always looking good. So, first, why do we write emails in the first place? There's usually a few reasons why we will write them in the workplace. One is to report or announce some kind of important decision or event. Another one is to follow up and get feedback from people about different decisions or actions that were talked about in the workplace. Another one is to make inquiries, which is to ask for information about something. And last is to clarify information we need to understand or that we need other people to understand. So, some of the problems that happen when people write emails. We don't want to just sit and just start writing, just start spitting out stuff. Because people often don't read emails. Sad but true, many people will just ignore emails or not read the entire email. Sometimes in the workplace, people can read an email and misunderstand the message, what you were trying to say, or really have trouble following your ideas. So that's why to solve all these problems, really it's important to remember, just like with any writing assignment we have ever done, is to remember that organization is just the most important part of any kind of professional writing, whether it's in school or the workplace. Having a clear organization really will make everything a lot easier for your coworkers, your bosses, or people that you want to work with to understand. So some key points to make sure that you do that. The first, emails should be as short as possible and clearly organized. We don't want long walls of text that they have to sort through. We need to really remember that all of the professionals that we work with, they have a limited amount of time and they are taking time to read our work. So we want it to be as short as possible and make sure our ideas are easy to follow. So to do that, we want to include an effective subject line, which we'll talk about in a moment. Make sure we clearly state the purpose of the email. Organize our ideas into effective paragraphs. And then we also want to use a professional tone. So these are the things we're going to cover today. So here, let's take an example of this email. It's got the different parts. Let's take a look at those different parts of the email. So the first one here, the thing at the top, this is the subject line. It tells when it comes into their inbox, this is the first thing that they will see. So it's really important that it's effective. And then next, the next part here is a greeting. We always want to include some kind of a greeting when we start any letter. Next, the paragraphs, this is called our body of that email. This is where we have our real message and our ideas. And then after our body, we have one sentence separate from all the others that is a final action. And then last but not least, we end with a closing. So these are all of the different parts of the email and what they will look like. Okay, so first, before we start writing anything, remembering professional tone. So a couple things to remember when you're writing in the workplace. It's really important to remember that emails present your image to your coworkers, to your teachers, to the hiring departments that might hire you someday, to clients, anyone that you want to work with. So it's really important to keep a couple things in mind. Emails are not like sending messages to our friends online or Facebook or Instagram or any of these other apps that we use, right? We want to avoid using abbreviations or emojis. This is for informal communication between friends. We keep it out of our professional emails. And when we are using grammar, and that's going to be very important, but sometimes when we use text messages, you will see abbreviations like I and you, these pronouns be shortened. But this is only in informal communication when I am writing professional emails or when any of us are writing professional emails. It's really important that we take the extra time to make sure it looks good, and we don't want to do these kind of shortening. So on that same note, we want to avoid using any of those kind of abbreviations that we might also find in text messages, like, LOL. If you need to laugh in an email, you should not Really, you shouldn't. But, where are you, WRU, IMO, in my opinion, we really want to avoid any of those kind of abbreviations. Here in my Bitmoji, you can see what spelled WAT. Yeah, we really want to make sure we don't do that in an email. Relevant abbreviations are okay. So you guys can use H&C for Herman and Corey T's, for example, for your assignment, or UCC for Universal Cola Company, FTP for for the other company making an offer. But it's really important that if you use those relevant abbreviations, that you know that it's something that everyone in the email chain will understand, right? And they should really be only relevant professional ones. So a couple other things. We want to avoid using bold writing or caps or any of those other points of emphasis. Those really, I use them in presentations, right? But when we are writing emails, we want our words to capture people's attention, not the font or anything like that. It can come across weird when you are writing these emails if you're using bold or all capital letters. So we want to use our words to make people pay attention. We don't want to demand attention with our fonts. And the last and most important thing here as well, I mean, all of these are extremely important, but also when you're writing emails, check for spelling and grammar mistakes. Take a look, make sure, this is why we practice spelling and grammar a lot in class. As we practice these skills, we will get better at doing it the first time, but we always want to check and proofread before we send out any kind of professional emails. There are some apps that you can use in your professional life to help you, but you want to really, in our class, you want to practice those skills about getting good enough that you don't need to rely on them. So let's take a look. So here's that body from that email, and let's take a look at that subject line, how we write a subject line. So the most important thing about a subject line is that you answer the question as soon as they see your email in their inbox. Why are you writing? Why are you sending this email? So here I have my email, and I take a look about what I'm writing. I'm writing to you to report about the sales figures and hiring needs that we discussed in our most recent meeting. So really what I'm looking at is the hiring needs. I recommend that that second paragraph, recommend that we hire a marketing team so we can increase sales. So again, here we have hiring a marketing team. So I choose for my subject line, hiring needs for next meeting, right? Now, you can do other ones as well. There's not one answer that it must be for your subject line, so long as it captures what you are writing about. Let's say my purpose is to report the sales figures and the hiring needs. I can briefly and shortly say report on sales and hiring. So the subject line should be brief, really easy to see and understand, and it should clearly represent what you are writing. You don't want to write something like, please read this, right? For that same reason that we talked about with professional tone. We want, if it is something that they need to hear, they will see it, right? Hiring needs for next meeting, they will read it because they know what it's about. Other one like previous meeting, right? That is too vague, right? So it talks about what I am talking about, but it's not specific enough. What about the previous meeting? So we really want to make sure that it captures what we want to say, what we will talk about as briefly as possible with the subject line, and that's the real key thing there. So remember, your reader should know exactly what the email is about before they open it. That is the purpose of the subject line. Okay, so you got your subject line. Now we need to start our email, right? So when we first start that email, we start with that greeting, and the general tried true formal greeting is dear. So dear hiring manager, dear shareholders, dear teacher so-and-so, right? So we always want to start with that with a formal greeting anytime you're writing. If you are writing to a friend or a close colleague, you can say hello, you can say hi, if you really know the person well. And in this instant, informal greeting. But we want to avoid things like hi and really unprofessional kind of language. Keep it, we want everything that we write to be presentable, right? Okay, so you've got that in that formal greeting that you start with. Now the first sentence of your email, the very first thing that you say. We don't want to start with a whole bunch of introduction, flowery introduction. We want to get right to the point. And the first sentence of your email should clearly state your purpose. And one way to use that, I am writing to. Why are you writing? Why are you writing? I am writing to announce the new schedule. I'm writing to follow up on last week's meeting. I'm writing to inquire about product options. I'm writing to clarify yesterday's decision. Really succinctly, in one sentence, clearly state the purpose that you are writing. Why are you writing? Okay. Now, so in your assignment, your first paragraph, right, you guys need to summarize the meeting, the shareholder meeting that you had. So and this is something that you might often need to do if you are reporting or following up on something. Okay, so a good summary, right? When you're writing a summary, one thing that I got from an old teacher of mine that always stuck with me, that I always remember, is that like a summary is like a swimsuit. It should be two things. It should be long enough to cover all of the essentials, but short enough to hold your attention. So using the swimsuit analogy here, something like this, way too long, and you know, obviously Homer Simpson, he's a little short. He's not covering all of his essentials. So, right, when you guys are writing your summary, you want to you want to think about your meeting, and you want to think about what were the key points that led you to a decision. And you don't need to cover every single topic or explain everything, but pick 3 key points that you were discussing in your meeting and summarize them in 1 sentence each if you can, 2 if you can't, but really 1 sentence each or so. Really, as with everything in an email, you want to keep it short enough to hold their attention, right? Now, in business, when you guys are writing, or any kind of profession that you guys are working in your careers, you're often going to need to convince someone to do something or deliver some kind of a recommendation. For your assignment, you need to recommend to all the shareholders how they should vote about Universal Cola Company's offer to buy Herman and Corey Teas, right? You want to convince them to vote the way you want. So it's the same exact structure as we did in English class for persuasive writing. And for more information on that, more detailed information, you can go check out the persuasive writing body paragraphs video, and I'll put that here in the description. But it's the same exact structure here, kind of just applied to business. We start with a clear recommendation, which is our claim. So recommendation, because for some kind of reason, so some kind of effect that you want to create, or 2, a goal that you want to accomplish. It's that same complex sentence form, and then 1 paragraph that proves that reason, right? So, for example, from my email, I said that we should hire a marketing team to communicate our brand. Communicating our brand, that's the goal of my recommendation. So I want to start my paragraph clearly there with that recommendation and the goal that I want to happen. Then we want to follow up with some kind of example that supports that recommendation about communicating our brand. Some kind of example that shows we need to communicate our brand, shows some kind of benefit for communicating our brand. You don't have to go out and do research. Sometimes you might need to, but you can also just use examples from the workplace. When you guys are working, you will have experience that is relevant to the decisions that you will do. So it's that exact same procedure as we do with persuasive writing. Thinking of your own examples, using the ones that you discussed in the meeting. So, for example, I say we should hire a marketing team to communicate our brand. Last quarter, sales were down by 10%, right? Now, so that is a problem that is an example that I'm going to use to show why we need to communicate our brand. So then After that, you need to explain how that example will, or addressing that example will create a positive effect for your company, prevent some kind of negative effect, and that's going to really make it effective. So for using that if-will form, right, if we hire a professional team, they will help us find a new market for our products. So it's that same form, you put that into a paragraph, but using that same process. It's why we're teaching it to you guys, is because if you use that, it can really help you communicate your recommendations clearly. Okay, so you've got a good subject line, you've introduced, you've got a good formal opening, you have clearly stated why you're writing, then for you guys, you've got a summary there, and you've delivered your recommendation. Now, or whatever you do in the body of your emails, at the end, you will always want to end with one sentence that is separate from your body and clearly states the action that you want to happen next, or that you hope will happen next. So, for example, right, we can use that word I hope, right? I hope. I hope that we can discuss this at the next meeting. I hope to hear from you soon. I hope that the decision is clear for you now. Let me know if there are any questions. Whatever it is, it doesn't need to be super detailed, just one sentence that clearly states some kind of action that you want to happen next, how the person should respond to this email. And it should be separate from the body paragraphs that you have. And then after you have that final closing sentence, you will then have that closing, that little closing right underneath. Just like you started with dear, here you can end with sincerely, is a really common formal one. That's kind of the standard one that we use, but you can also say best wishes. Slightly less formal, but still very formal. For informal closings for coworkers you know well, you can say best, right? Instead of best wishes, you can say best, right? But you want to avoid using those abbreviations like CU. I know that's there in the informal example in your book, but let's avoid using any and all abbreviations in emails. It's a very good habit to have. And avoid saying bye. Like, start, you want to end with a action statement and then something more formal. Saying goodbye just doesn't work. So sincerely, best, best wishes, best, and then your name. Pick one of those and then just say your name, and that is a really effective closing for your email. So when you write emails, if you clearly state your purpose in the subject line in that first sentence of your email, clearly organize your writing into paragraphs, whatever the purpose of your paragraphs are, whether it's to convince someone, to summarize something, to describe something. Clearly organize them and outline if you can. You might probably in your professional lives won't be able to outline every single email that you do, but for important ones you absolutely should. And very important, use professional tone, email form, the email form, so you have that opening, have that that greeting, have that clear subject line, have that action statement at the end of your sentence, or at the end, that action sentence at the right underneath your body, and check for spelling and grammar mistakes. Absolutely, like for this assignment, spend a lot of time taking a look at spelling and grammar and making sure that everything is super polished. So if you can do these things, you will be able to communicate your ideas very well in the workplace. Your coworkers will understand your emails clearly, and that's going to be really good for your professional image, and it's going to make your life at work really good, and it's going to make people understand you very well. So that's all for writing emails. It's pretty simple. We want to keep them short. We want to keep them clear and easy to understand, and use that, stating our purpose and clearly, using a formal tone, and having that good structure. That's all, guys. Good luck on your assignments, and I will see you guys.